Many are confused about the timing of the rapture of the church because of what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 when he said, at the last trump. And they'll skip forward in their Bibles to the book of Revelation, and they'll see that there are 7 trumpets and say, well, at the 7th trumpet, that must be when the rapture is going to take place. However, as I talk about in the book, They Lied to You About the Rapture, I'm going to read you a segment from it here in a moment. This is a mistake because when Paul wrote 1 Corinthians around, 53 AD, he had no reference to the writings of the Apostle John. John didn't write the book of Revelation until around 95 AD. So we're 40 years separated. So when Paul is writing about the last trump, he could not be referring to a revelation that the Apostle John has not yet received. So what is he talking about? Well, in the Jewish feasts system, there are trumpets for everything. And we walk through in detail in the book. Now, just in reference to this concept of using the phrase the last trump with a revelation, interchangeably using it with a revelation that was given to John 40 years later, let me show you how ridiculous this is. Imagine if someone in 2025 is watching an old Monty Python skit about spam, and they think they're referring to spam emails. We all know that back in 1980, spam had nothing to do with the junk cluttering our inboxes. It was just a salty, delicious canned meat, and it still is today. Right, Evan?
Debatable.
It's not debatable. This is the mistake people are making by retroactively applying the phrase last trump to John's 7th trump in the book of Revelation. Paul wasn't talking about John's trump because it would have been impossible for him to do so. This would be like hearing someone in a video from 1980 mention the cloud and thinking they meant a data storage method instead of a fluffy thing in the sky. The same applies to terms like virus, stream, or tablet. These words carry different meanings today, and trying to apply a modern revelation to an old conversation just doesn't work. And that's what people do when they try to apply John's reference to the 7th trump to Paul's reference in 1 Corinthians 15 with the last trump. However, when we go into the book, Evan, this is cool. We go into different feasts and different celebrations. Now, Rosh Hashanah is known as the Feast of Trumpets. Now, here's something that most people don't realize. During the Feast of Trumpets, the shofar was blown a total of 100 times, and the final blast was a very particular blast. The final trumpet had a particular name. It was called the Great Blast, or the Last Trump. It's the culmination of a series of trumpet calls intended to awaken and gather God's people, symbolizing the completion of God's plan and heralding the coming of the Messiah. Now, in the book, I go through the sections of the blowing of the trumpet, that there's 30 blasts and 30 blasts and 30 blasts, and then the final 10 blasts, and of course, the last one is the last trump or the great blast. So it could be referring to that. There's also several other options we get into in the book that the last trump could be referring to. We have actually 11 or so unique diagrams that we've created just for you that we put in the book that outline the 7 trumpets that the Apostle John was referencing, as well as the feast of God and what they could symbolize prophetically, just to make it easy for the reader to dive into. So if you haven't already gotten your copy, make sure you get a copy of They Lied to You About the Rapture at rapturebook.com. But I think answering these questions is pivotal, and we want to know, what questions do you have? We've probably already answered them in the book, but let us know right there in the comments. And hey, we'll see you in the next video.
Supposed to look at the other camera.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
How was I supposed to know that?